My name is Christy Busby, and you are about to listen to the next episode of my podcast called Fate, From Atheism to Enlightenment. So come on in, join me. We're going to talk about it all, from atheism to enlightenment. Alrighty, guys, here we go. Get ready, and welcome to your fate. Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of Fate. How's everybody doing today? On today's show, I am bringing you Jason Brett Searle. He is an NLP practitioner, a licensed hypnotherapist. He is a musician, a filmmaker. He sounds a bit like a Renaissance man to me. He is here to talk about his new book, The Monkey and the Bodhi Tree. We are talking crazy wisdom today, gang. Jason, welcome to your fate, my friend. How you doing today?
Thank you very much. Lovely intro. I like the Renaissance man bit. Yeah, I strive
Well,
for something like that. Yeah.
yes, I mean, you do so many things, writer, filmmaker, musician, hypnotherapist. I feel like you're a jack of all trades, my friend.
Maybe I just
I'm
get
very
bored too easily. I don't know. Uh,
it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. I can only hope to be as talented. Anyways, Jason, welcome to this show. I'm very excited to talk about your new book. Crazy wisdom is kind of the theme of the day for the show, but I'd love to hear more about your own personal spiritual journey. Where are you at in the world of your path? How did you step on it? And how did you come to be so interested in crazy wisdom, which is a new term for me that we're going to get into?
hmm. Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Um, it's a difficult question that. Where did it all begin? I think I was always as a child as much introverted as I was extroverted. So I definitely had an ability to spend time alone happily in my own experiments and thoughts and so on. I think when in my sort of late teens, when I fell into playing music with a band here on the south coast of Spain, uh, I'd always been a keen writer as a child. I remember writing poetry and essays and stories and this sort of thing. Always loved the English language, and when I became the vocalist for this band, um, I was presented with the task of writing songs, which was something I really wanted to do. That was the part of it that drew me more than the actual singing. The singing, I kind of had to stumble my way through and learn. I was more confident about the writing part. Um, but uh, but what happens is when you start thinking about lyrics, I mean, you start thinking about what do I say? What's what's of value to say? And I think one of the first sort of things that got me thinking more deeply was that, and the need to actually say something of value and something of meaning. Um, and I've always been interested in, I suppose, the existential questions of life. What's it all about? What is this? And who is this guy that I appear to be? And all that good stuff. So from about that same time, being sort of perhaps disillusioned at that time with my own upbringing in the Church of England and sort of Christianity, I naturally turned to the Tao Te Ching and the Bhagavad Gita, and I was just sort of devouring all those type of texts. And it did take me a few years to rediscover Christianity, the mystical aspects, and it's just as beautiful as anything else, I think. Um, but it went from there, and it went from questioning these things and trying to gain more clarity about what it is all about. And, you know, where do I go as a young man in this world? I needed some guidance, I suppose.
I think that is a lost art almost, don't you? That asking that question of who am I? What am I doing here? I feel like people these days are not asking these very important questions of ourselves, and me, myself included. I only had my own spiritual awakening in the last few years, and I roamed about this planet a long time without having those deep existential questions rise within me. And so I find it a breath of fresh air to meet other people, and I've met quite a few of them on this podcast that really are asking the most important question that you could possibly ask yourself while you're here, which is, who am I, and what am I doing here, and what is this life, and what is this reality, and in diving deeper into figuring that out. Now, when reading your book, um, reading ancient text, ancient stories, things of that nature, it's not they're not easy reads. They're it's a read that you actually have to use your little human brain and think about when you're reading the words. And I kind of loved that about your book as well, that you really had to think about what you were reading and understand what it was trying to tell you.
Mm.
And I enjoyed that about your book. But let's get into um crazy wisdom, which is a term I'd never heard before. And I as I was reading your book, I kind of identified a little bit with the crazy wisdom
Mm.
aspect of it, as far as not caring what other people thought of me and kind of living outside the box and forging my own path. And I've always been in that side of the I've never had lived a mainstream life. Like, if I told you about my life, you'd be like, "Really?" I'd be like, "Mhm."
I don't
I've
know you,
lived
but
a
I kind of
very
get that vibe from you. Yeah.
I'm a super not mainstream kind of person.
Yeah.
And so when I was reading it, I was identifying with the crazy wisdom parameters that you had put in place. But why don't you, in your own words, tell me, where did this term originate from? Never heard crazy wisdom.
Mm.
And what it means to you, and what is crazy wisdom exactly?
Well, the term itself, the English term crazy wisdom, comes from Chogyam Trungpa, who was a Tibetan master, contemporary Tibetan master. And it was his translation of a Tibetan term. They have a very rich culture of crazy wisdom masters, the Tibetan Buddhists. Um, and it's a word that's been used like any of these terms, God or enlightenment or meditation. They're very big concepts, and people use them in different ways. They have different nuances and concepts. And so this book is an attempt to sort of lay out the broader landscape of what we might consider crazy wisdom, and give people a clearer vision of the details. Um, so I think one of the one of the ideas that the book goes into that not many people are familiar with, we're all familiar with the pre-logical and pre-rational and pre-conventional stages of like a toddler or a small child. We recognize that there's logic, there's reason, and there's pre all of that, right? And we have to develop into having logic and reason. And what we don't realize, or what's not stated too clearly in modern culture, but you can find it throughout all the wisdom traditions, more or less explicit, is the fact that there is something post. So there's a cognitive state that's post logical and post or trans reason, right? And trans conventional. And as the simplistic sort of dualistic beings that we are, we tend to break things down into black and white and big and small and left and right. And so in that sort of map, that limited map, you have logic and everything that's not logical, it's illogical. Let's put it all in the big same sack. And we have reason and we have, the lack of it, or we have conventional and then it's unconventional, and it all gets lumped together. And what I set out to demonstrate is that we're doing ourselves a disservice in doing that. because we're not realizing that there are some very elevated states that sages and saints have accessed, and they might sound to a simple person like a bit mad when they say these things, but it's not because they're coming at it from the pre-logical, pre-rational sort of side of the toddler. They've developed reason, they've developed logic, and they've gone beyond it. So a large part of crazy wisdom is dealing with that side of the trans-logical. Um, it's also used in a different sense. And if once again, if we look at the traditions, you look at the tantric tradition in India. So we had, after the Buddha, several hundred years of Buddhist development. It was formalized. There were institutions that arose. There were monastic traditions. You know, Theravada was the main sort of vehicle for the Buddhist teachings. And there were a lot of people, perhaps like you and me, who were a bit sort of outliers, didn't really conform, didn't want to do that thing. And yet they did they were concerned about these bigger questions, and they were interested in enlightenment or these big themes, God, or, self realization. And so out of this sort of disjointed bunch of freaks and weirdos, we see the birth of a new tradition, which is the tantric tradition. And it was in its early stages a direct reaction to monkhood. So the monks would shave their heads, tantrikas leave their hair long. And monks were prohibited from wearing sort of earrings and accessories. Tantrikas, bangles, you name it, necklaces, whatever. It was all good. The monks were celibate, no sex. The tantrikas would indulge in it. No alcohol. They would drink. I mean, we have to realize that it's in the context of a serious spiritual practice. So it wasn't like they were just hedonists who are doing this every day, but they were including that. And instead of sort of rejecting it, or they were realizing that it's another element of the path. And now we have a tantric tradition that's grown out of that and that supports that sort of way towards truth. So I think a lot of this is just spirituality available for unconventional people who don't want to do things the same way as everyone else.
I think one of the biggest misnomers out there about spirituality or even religion is that there's one way to do it, that there's one way to find your path, that there's one way to think. And I think we have to start understanding that there's many ways um to have a spiritual practice that is good for what you believe in and however you feel about your own source, God, whatever. I think spirituality should be a very individualistic thing, meaning if you're all in seeking higher knowledge of who you are and understand and trying to understand that part of our consciousness, does it really matter the little bits and bobs of the things that you put into practice that make you want to get there? Meaning, does it really matter if you're incorporate, you know, long hair, short hair, jewelry, dance, chanting? It's all kind of getting you into the same vein in a way. Would you say, like,
Well,
what I'm trying to say is there any really rules to finding spiritual enlightenment? Really? Is
I
there?
think there are rules, but not on the surface. So yeah, you're
Ah,
talking about the surface of
yes,
course, it can't matter if you've got long hair or short hair to find the truth, what bearing has truth, because ultimately that's what it's about. What bearing does
yes,
truth have on those superficial aspects? Um,
yes.
so so no, in that sense there isn't. And from what I remember, a very young age, I was always surprised by the lack of the inability of conventionally religious people to figure out that, like, when the Muslims saying Allah, well, you calling it God, can't you realize that just listen to the definition behind it and you realize it's the same thing, and these arguments that have been going on. And but I suppose when you get deeper, when you start to listen to the mystics, on that level, they don't have any arguments. The mystics
Yeah.
are the ones that can see eye to eye. And also in the traditions themselves, they talk about this as being, I mean, you said that we're all unique. There's only one person that has your voice. There's only one person
Yes.
that looks like you, that has your fingerprint, that cooks like you, that whatever. Why wouldn't there be a unique spiritual path for you? And the Buddha spoke about there being 80,000 doors to the Dharma, right?
Yes.
So that's what he's saying. There's as many paths up the mountain as there are people that climb the mountain. So crazy wisdom embraces that rather than sort of rejecting it. It allows for people to manifest themselves in a unique and authentic way. Whereas a lot of conventional or exoteric religion is about conformity, is about making us all the same in certain ways. Um,
A Absolutely, and it's one of the reasons why I was an atheist for most of my life. I grew up in the church,
yeah.
and my parents made me go, and I never, was able to, um, conform to what they wanted me to be and who they wanted me to be. I didn't like the hierarchy of the church. I didn't like that females did couldn't lead anything. They had to be submissive. I was not going to do that. That was not
No,
ever
no,
gonna
no.
happen. And, I didn't like that it was all high, it was based on my church was anyways, based on scaring me into being good.
Hmm.
If you don't do this, you're gonna go to hell. If you don't do this, you're gonna rot in hell. Like God's watching, very fear, shame, guilt, um, that kind of vibe. And so I just completely rebelled and said, I don't believe in any of this. This God thing that you're talking about can't be a thing. It's not a thing. I pretty much took religion off my plate for most of my adult life and just lived. I don't believe that you need religion to be a good person. I don't believe you need religion to be a moral, ethical person. I don't think that they correlate necessarily. I think there's a lot of people that practice religions that are the very opposite of being moral and compassionate and empathetic, and they lean into their religion as like they're superior beings to other people. It's it's a bizarre situation I think religion has brought humankind into, because I think organized religion has brought nothing but division and control, and people are not able to think for themselves. They don't understand who they are. They're looking outside of themselves for something that lies within. I think God lies within. God lies within us all. I think everything that we see, God is there in evidence.
Amen.
And I think religion really is probably been one of the worst things that's happened. Not like I hate not all religions,
True.
not every church, but in general, what I love about the book that you wrote is that you really make people understand that it is less about the dogma that you're ingesting every day. That I even like wrote one of them down. It was something like um religion is something to be thought of as one aspect of many, but to use it and follow only one way is the exact opposite of how we are supposed to be thinking about our spirituality. I,
True.
I I just paraphrase that
Yeah.
in the biggest way, but what I got out of it was I think people need to understand that their religion is just a one tiny aspect that they should be looking at when it comes to finding out who you are and what our reality is. And it shouldn't be the foundation of everything when it comes to thinking about spirituality, that there is nuance in everything, that there's a much more expansive way to approach your spiritual self than just going to church on Sunday and doing this almost obligatory thing that they do, that I feel religion is losing its meaning in a lot of ways, in a
Well,
weird
I think
way.
your story is all too common, and I share it, because I was brought up in the Church of England, English Christianity, and I went to private school, so that meant church in the mornings, went to chapel, on your knees doing your prayers, and it was as a young boy that it was just the whole kind of dogma was, come on now, don't don't be nah, I ain't buying that. And I would say that I was an atheist for a few years when I'd thrown that out. I had nothing to replace it. I was into science and the possibilities of technology to solve all our problems. And I think, unfortunately, we're in a place where there's too many people that have done that, but they haven't perhaps had the luck of coming across. I sought it out. I went and looked for other explanations, and I said, I started getting into these Oriental texts, and I went that sort of route to discover these things. But I think too often people are left with nothing else, and conventional society doesn't give them any juicy sort of stuff to replace that atheism. The atheism is just the kind of default position. It's like, well, this is clearly nonsense. Okay, I must be an
Yes.
atheist. But
Yep.
it didn't take long for me to I suppose, refine my understanding of God and religion
Yeah.
and realize that there's an exoteric and there's an esoteric. There's an
Yeah.
outer form and there's an inner form. There's a mysticism there. There's a personal relationship with God. And there's the authorities that want to be the middleman and tell you because they've
Yes.
got a personal relationship with God. So
That's right.
it's kind of when I got onto that track and realized that, it's like, well, the other one, leave them to it. What can you do? I mean, let them get on with it. And and I was just fascinated with this mystic tradition that's manifested throughout all the religions.
Yes.
And the crazy wisdom aspect is one of it when people go beyond the dogma. And there's a Sufi saying that says, none attains to the ultimate truth until 1,000 honest people have called him an infidel. Right. So
Yes.
once
Yeah.
again, it's this sort of, if you try to find God in outward religion, then look at the outward religious types. Are they godly people? Are they really having a one-to-one with the man himself, Um, no, you have to kind of go outside of that. You have to look at these sort of outliers in the spiritual
Yes.
landscape and the saints and sages, which there's always been this kind of struggle as well. A lot of the great saints, even within the Christian tradition, were vilified by the Catholic Church when they came out and said certain things. And it's taken centuries for them to go, okay, actually the people love this guy, so we'll bring him into the fold as one of our own. But there's plenty of
Uh,
examples. And here I live in Spain. There's St. John of the Cross. He was jailed by the Inquisition. And now his poetry at the Dark Night of the Soul is held up by all Spaniards as one of the greatest sort of examples of Castilian poetry. But it took him to go to jail and face the inquisitors and be accused of heresy, and for them to see that he was kind of just way beyond them.
Sometimes I think, especially in America, it's funny you mentioned the Inquisition because I've been interested in that lately for some reason, and
Mhm.
all the truly torturous, terrible things that they did to people. in order to gain to root out anybody that was healers that were using herbs to heal people that worshiped Mother Earth, that were that were more esoteric and spiritual and um earthbound, nature bound, people of that. They were rooting through the villages and figuring out, oh, there's a healer over there, and then they would go and torch them up, light them up, call them heretics, devils, all of these things, put fear into people. I think that we all forget that it's not that Christianity grew out of love. It really didn't. It grew out of force. People literally being um having to subscribe to this governmental way of thinking, which was government and church were kind of simpatico, and you either had to think along those lines and not speak out against it, or you were going to get
Or
killed.
face the consequences. They've always
Yes.
been the way. They killed Christ. They
Yeah.
killed Socrates. They burnt Giordano Bruno at the stake. They
Yes.
drew and quartered Al-Hallaj, who is one of these mystics that's mentioned in the book. Al-Hallaj for saying, An al-Haq, which means I am the truth. This was heresy. How can you say that? And he was beheaded. He was hung, beheaded, quartered, burnt. I mean, they could.
We're we're so barbaric, man. We are so
Well,
barbaric
well,
in what we are capable of doing to one another. Like,
to the
I don't
great
know. I
people as well, the torch
Yes.
bearers who we should be
Yep.
listening to. That's-
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
We're not smart. I mean, we're in modern times today. Don't you feel like crazy wisdom is almost entirely, like, where do you see any evidence of in today's society where we can look to somebody and call them even wise, or somebody that is speaking in a way that is um uh moving people to evolve in their opinions on who we are, on their spiritual nature, on anything? Like, I don't see a lot of guru types out there that are even on this path where they're culturally respected in a way that are allowing people to open up to a different way of thought. Do you see any evidence
I
of crazy wisdom people out there today?
yes, I think there are, and I think we're in a social space where conventional society is one thing, mainstream society is the thing that holds all our attention. It's forced through the TVs and the radios and you know what I mean? All the mainstream media signs up to one version of reality. And you don't find it much there, but I've never sought much in those places anyway. And I think we're at a time where we have the most dumbed down people at any time in history, on the one hand, and we also have most clued up, beautiful, wise people at the same time. But what do we get fed? Mainstream media. We generally get the dumbed down. We generally get that sort of side of it. So I just think people have to seek it out as most things, pop
You
music
do.
is pop music. It's what it is. And if you're a true musician or musical fan, then perhaps your tastes, you know, range into other areas that are not covered too broadly by mainstream. And it's the same with anything, I think, and spirituality is just another aspect of that. Uh, so it's there, yeah, it's always there, and there are some big names that are fairly contemporary, like Gurdjieff, who died in 1947, um,
Okay.
and he was a big, crazy wisdom guy. He used to get his students drunk and all these sorts of things, but I think he was a real genuine master, and there are almost miraculous events told about him by people who are contemporary. It's not like we're going back 2,000 years for Chinese whispers to kind of develop this mythology and stuff. And Adi Dar is another. He died in 2000, early 2000s, I think. He was another strange character who causes a lot of polemic and controversy by mention of his name, and some people think he's a charlatan. I think he was a master, and I think he definitely had crazy wisdom phases to his teaching, where he would indulge in, you know, sexual practices with his students and alcohol, and but where you see that it's not hedonism is that it was a short period of his teaching, and for the most part, his ashram was, vegetarian and meditation and no alcohol, and that was the lifestyle. So it wasn't this hedonistic thing. It was this tantric element of, are you going to get a sense of, are you going to boost your sense of ego by thinking that you're all pure and spiritual because you don't drink alcohol? And so, okay, we have to break that down too, as well, and a lot of the tantric
Hmm.
reaction was about that. A lot of the monks were on this sort of ego trip because they didn't, weren't attracted to females, and they didn't indulge in that, and they didn't sort of give way to those lesser desires. But it fostered this egotism at the same time, which goes against the whole point. So the tantric reaction was almost like, well, let's get beyond that, and let's at least sort of get that out of the way so we can't feel that, or be accused of that by others, or be held up as this holier than thou type figure.
Yeah. Well, you talk about the concept of selfhood in the book and how we as humans, it prevents us from discovering who we are, our spiritual development, because um, when you lean into the individual nature, the ego, the esteem, arrogance, it can propagate that in within us. And the the way in which we can get beyond that is to get out of this dualistic way of thought and thinking that I assume you think we're all connected. We are all kind of what is, what is your basic spiritual belief? Like what do you feel the nature of our reality is? Where are you at in the world? I feel like we're all connected. It's all one. We are a, a, a a global consciousness in a way. We're all connected energetically, and we all have our egos are individualistic, but within that, above that, we are all energy connected. What are your thoughts?
Well, well, first of all, I think truth with a capital T can't be approached through one concept or one idea. And this is, again, the paradoxical nature of some of these sages. They've been accused of not being consistent. And of course they wouldn't be. They're dealing with ultimate truth. How are you going to be consistent with it? So there are many nuances, and looked at through a certain lens, we could say we are all one. There is no division anywhere, right? But in my own thinking and my own sort of experience, and breaking down spirituality to its simplest terms, I would say the whole dilemma of human beings is revolves around selfhood. The concept that I am here, I am this guy in this bag of flesh, and what is outside of that is not me. So it's me and not me. There's the basic duality. And I think that's an illusion. And obviously, look at the Buddha, and one of his main teachings, although people don't really dwell on it enough, I think, was anatta, or no self. He clearly stated that there is no abiding self, right? And there's two ways that this same thing has been looked at, and I think it's the same but two different ways of looking at it. So you have sort of the Vedanta or Hindu tradition, which talks about the self with a capital S, right? And you are that. And that is all there is. So you can either sort of expand the self to include everything. So there's nothing that's not the self, and that is what you are. Or you can take away what you think you are until there's nothing left, right? Ultimately, it's the same thing. You're transcending the fundamental duality. You're going beyond this idea that there's me and not me, right? And they're two paths approaching the same thing that if you're not sort of too aware of the traditions behind them, they might sound like opposite directions, but they're really not.
Mm.
They're transcending this duality. That's where all our problems arise from, right? If you can, the tree doesn't have a self sense. The tree doesn't suffer. Animals don't have a self sense. They have an instinctual sense of themselves, and they live upon that. But they don't have this conceived sense of, here I am, I end up my skin, and everything is outside, because that's what creates, fear of death. That's what creates this sort of temporal entity. And there is no temporal entity. And I think all of the great sages, enlightenment is about transcending the fundamental duality between self and other. And so when, Christ was saying, do unto others, you know, it's not like you have to do this because it's a rule and I have to be a good person. And he was speaking from a state of consciousness where others were himself. He didn't have to try and be a nice guy. It was like, I don't have to try to be nice to myself. I just am. I look after myself because it's me, right? So if I consider you as my very self in a fundamental way, why would I not look out for you in exactly the same way? There's no
Yes.
law behind it, no moralistic sort of, he's just speaking from a transcended state where he had gone beyond him as this guy that lived 2000 years ago. And he transcended completely that illusory idea that we all hold to be true.
Yep. I think that's been one of my uh, biggest most impactful things that I've learned on my journey in spirituality was what Jesus Christ really was. Because I was taught something very different when I grew up.
No,
And,
me too.
Jesus wasn't somebody that was like, follow me, erect churches in me. He was saying, be like me. I am who this is who this is who we are. Be like me. I am the way. Follow,
Well,
I don't,
he was talking from a transcended state. When he
yes,
said, I
yes,
am the way, I am the life,
yes,
not
yes,
I, the little man here. It's the
exactly.
transcendent S, self with a capital S. And
Yeah,
this is where so much error falls into religion, that you have
yes,
people talking from an unbounded state to bounded people. So the people take it in the wrong context. He said the kingdom of heaven is within. He
that's
also
exactly
said
right.
clearly, when asked about speaking in parables, he said to his disciples, to you it is given to know the secrets, right? To them I speak in parables. But so once again, the esoteric to your disciples, and the exoteric for the people. I try and bring them along to a place where they might be able to be sort of open to the deeper teaching. But there was a
Right.
deeper teaching that went on in private with his disciples. And it was obviously the same techniques that have been used across, all around the world to further consciousness and to transcend this dilemma, this fundamental dilemma of where the self begins and ends, what is its extent, and going beyond the limited form that we take ourselves to be.
I feel like we are so distracted these days. Even speaking from my own self, I never would have had a spiritual awakening had I not gone through a health crisis.
Uh,
I would have plodded along my entire life having the best time because I was until I got sick, the best time. But when you get confronted with an illness or some sort of traumatic event, doesn't have to be an illness, it could be a death, it could be a divorce, it could be losing your it could be so many things that put you into a space where you don't understand your life anymore and you don't know where to go or what to do. And I do think that there's more and more people out there that are awakening, but I almost feel like there is this desire for I'm getting a little conspiratorial right
Go
now
for it.
that
So,
sorry,
um,
but
yeah,
I don't think that the powers that be, whoever you want to call them, want us to ask these questions about ourselves. I don't think that they want the kind of global citizens that align with each other in that way, that understand we are one, that understand the nature of what we're doing here. And I'm really hoping that many people wake up as quickly as possible. It's one of the reasons why I decided to do a podcast is because once I started walking down this spirituality path and I started getting into, I've done lots of plant medicine journeys and that really cracks you open
no, yeah.
and like, getting into meditation, getting into understanding multi-dimensional beings. Like I have surfed I've gone deep. There really isn't I'm pretty open-minded, and once I get very interested in something, I devour as much as I can
Mm,
without prejudice
yes,
at all. Like, oh,
yeah,
that's interesting. What's that about?
yeah, yeah.
Um but what are your thoughts on that? Do you feel like there is this they keep us distracted in a way almost to keep us separated from finding out not only who we are within, but allowing this deeper connection to take place within the world? Because I feel that we're in such a weird dystopian time
Mm,
in the planet right now. Like so many things, there's so much unrest everywhere. I feel like the financial systems are going to like I feel like you and I are going to see a lot of stuff coming up here in the next 5, 10 years that is
yeah,
going to be
but
may I'm
yeah,
and I do think it is going to take some sort of grand awakening to snap people out of our facade of what we think we are
mm,
and to open up and grow up and evolve and step into the limitless, powerful creators that we are within our own reality. We all are powerful in our own rights, our minds, our bodies, our energy, our life force. If you can use it and tap into that, I don't think they want us to do that, but I do think it could literally transform humanity as we speak. And what are your thoughts on that? Do you think we're in the middle of a great awakening? Do you think that we're going to see that in our lifetime?
um, well, I mean, I think it's definitely true that there's always been certain forces that have that it's not in their interest for people to awaken because from the sort of basic materialist aspect of the people who have the wealth, then to acquire more wealth, you need to be able to manipulate the people in order to give up their wealth in various ways. And how do you do that? Well, you keep them locked into their vices, and you keep them in fearful states. So they'll need you and keep throwing their money at you to protect them if you're the government, for example. And I think we can also, in higher dimensionalities, even talk about other entities that might be benefiting from this current state of affairs on our planet. The
Yep.
Gnostics spoke about the archons, the controllers. Uh, all traditions have their demons and the devil. And what's meant by this? I don't think they're just figurative ideas. I think there are definitely higher entities, higher consciousness. I think there's a great quote that um, the universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it's stranger than we can imagine.
Yeah.
And having as well experimented with certain plant teachers, that was a
Yes.
strong sense of, oh my God, this is not only weirder than I thought, it's weirder than my little human brain could possibly conceive of. So
Yep.
yeah, I think I'm all in with that. I think there are higher entities, there are good ones, there are bad ones, there are stuff that we might call aliens, but are they aliens from other planets? Don't really. Are they transdimensional? Yeah. I think, you know, it's like we're in this sort of matrix game. And in any game, you need a nemesis, you need something to overcome. Otherwise, what's the game? What's the point of playing type thing? Uh, so yeah, there are forces trying to keep us down on every
Yeah.
level. We're dealing with them at every level. And my search for truth has really no boundaries. It started, I must say, with the spiritual themes, the biggest questions, but, over the course of my life, conspiracy, I'm open to all these possibilities. I think more conspiracies are true than not true, to be honest. Uh, I think there's a conspiracy at the level of just our day to day. You spoke about sovereignty. I think we don't even understand what's been done to us, the level of trickery when it comes to having our birth certificates monetized and this sort of thing to back the transition to fiat currency and how we all exist with this capitalized name that is not actually us. It's a legal fiction that is designed to operate within
Yeah.
commerce. And there's a whole nother aspect to me that's very much involved in learning about that and what commerce is and what natural law is and common law and the difference between jurisdictions and all of these things. To me, it's all clarifying what this crazy place is that I find myself in with no operating manual or nothing, it's like, figure it out. So,
It's a crazy journey in a way. If you really look at life and the way it is, and I'm starting to do that more and more, where we get so programmed just to think like everyone else. You're supposed to get up and go to work and have a family and buy a house, and this is what you're supposed to do at this point in your life, and blah 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 blah. Which I never did any of that. But when I started investigating spirituality and beyond and what we really are, I wear such a different lens on my eyeballs when I see anything now. And I am one of the things that I do, whether I'm watching a TV screen, a movie screen, my phone, whatever, is that I'm constantly asking, what is this trying to get me to think, feel, say, or do? What is this? And then I make a logical deduction from there if that's something that I want to entertain my brain with.
mm,
Because one of the things that I think is needs to be talked about more is how easily programmed and manipulated we really are. We
oh,
really are so crazy. We're so influenced
people have no
by
idea.
they don't. They really have no idea how easily manipulated, controlled, and programmed we are as a species, especially today's society where we're so globally reached, with the internet and everything. Like you can't hide yourself from it.
Sure.
And if you're not watching everything with a filter on, which I do, you are going to be led down, who knows, a myriad of paths based on whatever your little emotional state pulls you in. Because you are just, that's the other thing I think that people don't think about is like, you have to kind of manage your emotions in a way, because your emotions can turn to thoughts, can turn to things, can show up in your reality. And it's a slippery little slope when you're not, when you're allowing yourself to mire in negative feelings, thoughts, beliefs. You're those that shit can show up in your reality, man. You are literally pulling that into your reality. And the law of attraction is a real law.
Mm.
And I full heartedly believe that if people understood that they had much more control over what happens within their own purview based
Yeah.
on their own emotional makeup, that we would also be living in a world where people would be much less um willing to be angry, to be fearful, to all of those things, and would ask a lot more questions about anybody who is trying to make them feel that way. And we don't. We just immediately respond, go in that emotion with no critical thinking skills whatsoever. None.
Well, this was one of my big rabbit holes after when I got interested in NLP, and on the back of studying the NLP, I did my first full length documentary, Mind Your Mind, which is about that. It's about psychological manipulation. It's about how we are being taken advantage of, and it aims to give people these tools so that they know how they're being tricked and manipulated. Because once again, this is all about knowledge. The more knowledge you have, the greater your ability to make your own choices. And these choices aren't the result of some subtle manipulation that's going on through your telephone or the TV show you're watching or the subliminal stuff that's going on in the movie that you watched, right? Um, and people have no idea how sophisticated these techniques are. And if they did, then they perhaps show a little bit of interest in, reclaiming that power
Yes.
and figuring out what the techniques are. And I was amazed when I studied NLP in London, um, and I found myself, walking through the streets and seeing posters and going, oh my God, they're using nominalizations and mind reading. I had like, these are the techniques now. Ah, I see it. And it's like, it was kind of the they live glasses that I got.
It's exactly
I
what I was
finally
gonna say. I'm
realized
like, it's like that. Yeah.
I had
Yes.
they live
Yes.
glasses, and it was like, oh my Lord. And I was analyzing. I couldn't kind of sit and watch a film as a normal person. It was like, you see that?
Yep.
They're doing this, they're
Yep.
doing that, they're doing this is for this
Yes.
reason. And it was and that's what I tried to communicate in the first documentary. Mind-blowing stuff.
We're so vulnerable. We are. We're vulnerable, and they know it, and they know exactly how to push our buttons. That's why advertising. That's why it's billions of dollars a year. It's why they want our data. Like, we give it up without any ability to control ourselves.
Yeah.
We can't help it.
It
It's really scary.
can be.
Honestly.
It can be if you're
Yeah.
completely ignorant to it. So,
Yeah.
it's like anything, get wise, figure out these things, be y we tend to decide what we eat and what we put into our bodies. We also need to decide, take a bit more control as to what we consciously expose ourselves to as well. Don't just let stuff be fed to you. Uh, decide. And I think this is one of the great things about the internet and the move away. A lot of people have moved away from, TV
Yeah.
broadcasting programming. They call it programming for good reason. And
That's exactly it.
we now have this ability of kind of seeking out what we're interested in and what we want. They're obviously, upping the game and bombarding social media and with similar techniques. And it's an ongoing struggle, but I think people
It
have to figure it out and get away.
it's so difficult because now that people do have so many more choices as to what they watch. It feels like it's making us lose touch of any commonalities as far as what our
Mm.
facts are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Particularly here in the United States, truth is like
Yeah.
whoever you're listening to that's feeding you what basically you already kind of believe anyways. Like they just, if you have certain tendencies to feel a certain way, they feed into that. And it's now at the point where there's no truth anymore.
True.
Like you literally in America could have a conversation with someone and be um armed with completely different so-called facts. So-called facts
Mm. Yeah.
because of whoever you're listening to. I you know, I think there's so many people out there that have an agenda that is disruptive and forges division between us now more than ever.
Mm.
And people are not smart enough to figure that out. They're just not. And I hate to call people dumb. It's not that I think people are dumb. I just think people are not equipped to deal with a type of psychological um psyop almost that is being perpetrated on them. They don't know, you know? If you're somebody, this is the way I like to always think about it. There's two ways that you can look at something. For instance, let's say you live in a little village in England and there's a new restaurant opening up and it's an Ethiopian restaurant. You can look at that as two ways. You can be the person that says, "Oh, honey, look, a new Ethiopian restaurant. Isn't it so exciting? I've never had that cuisine. Let's go next week." There's that. Or you could say, "An Ethiopian restaurant. Oh, that's weird. That doesn't belong in our neighborhood. That's an outside, you know." And it's just based on your own sense of fear in your body. You know what I'm saying? So they play on these already internal fears that people have based on how comfortable they are with different things.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not everybody is comfortable with change. Not everybody's comfortable being around something that they view as different.
Sure.
And depending on what your little brain fires off, they're going to turn that up, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
And I feel like there's a lot of that going on in the society, and it makes for people to get in their camps and see other people as the enemy. And now we really in our my country, you see each the other side politically as an enemy now, which is bizarre.
Well, we've had this very prolonged and subtle sort of r- training to disregard truth as existing. It's, part of postmodernism was and deconstructionism was the idea that no, everything's relative. Truth doesn't really exist. I have my truth, you can have your truth. And it's like, well, no, what you're talking about are opinions, right? So I might like this type of music and you might like that type of music. That's fair enough. Truth that is on another level. And I think for a lot of the development of, throughout the larger part of our history, we mankind was kind of aware that there was something called truth and we can be more or less sophisticated at getting to it. But now we live in this place where it's like, well, if you don't even subscribe to that idea that there is something called truth, well, go ahead. But any old nonsense it has to be equally, respected. And I think we don't realize that, of course, there's truth. I mean, it's clear that truth exists,
Yeah,
If there's
there's
no
no doubt.
truth, then go and put your hand in that flame because
Exactly.
it can't be true that you'd burn yourself. So we really have to kind of recuperate the idea that there is truth and we
Yeah.
must be able to commonly navigate it. And another aspect of this is the inability, the sort of triggering. mechanisms that they have nowadays, where certain groups of people have, you know, are now able to feel so offended by certain ideas that they don't even have to tolerate conversations about them. And once we've got into that, that's a hole that you're in that's too deep to you to get out. It's like conversation, we must always have debate. We must always have healthy conversation. We must always have the ability to question truths, even if they come from the highest so called authorities. We must always push for questioning them, looking at where they fail. That's the scientific method. The scientific method isn't coming up with this theory and then discarding everything that sort of goes against it and cherry picking everything that goes with it. That's the complete opposite of science. Science is
Yeah.
coming up with a theory and then trying to destroy it with everything
Yeah,
you have.
testing it. Yeah,
And
testing it, testing it.
if it stays there, then it's a better theory. But you've got to keep trying to undermine it, constantly undermine it, right?
Yep.
So there are some of these aspects that it's like, yeah, I have conversations with people and they can't tolerate certain things. And I like conversations about anything. I like to get wild in conversations. You know, Aristotle said it's the mark of an intelligent mind. The mark of an intelligent mind is the ability to entertain an idea without accepting it.
Yeah.
And that's it. You're not
Yeah.
obliged to accept what I'm saying. Let's play with this idea. Let's see it. Let's turn it around and figure
Mhm.
out what validity or not has. And we kind of lost that art to a big extent.
100%.
And it's a beautiful thing to meet with people who can just, they don't have to, they're not forced into this state of, oh my gosh, do I have to accept this or reject it? Or do I have to agree or disagree? Chill out. You don't
Yeah.
have to agree. You don't have to disagree. You can flow. It's like singing.
Yeah.
We can sing. We can dance. There's no reason other than singing or dancing behind it, you know what I mean? And the same
Yes.
should be for conversations. We should realize that we can talk about all of this stuff,
Anything.
the craziest conspiracies. Let's talk about it.
Yes.
See what we might
Yes.
find out.
It's I mean, conversation is a lost art. I don't even feel like people are having deep, meaningful conversations anymore like we used to.
Yeah.
I don't feel like people are really sitting down and, well, at least in the States, in coffee shops and like discussing concepts or,
Yeah.
I feel like it's all on your phone. Everybody's like
Yeah.
glued to whatever device that they have, whether you can look at it two ways. You could
At
look at it
least two
living
ways.
right now. Yeah, is a very dystopian, scary time to be alive. Or I'm trying to lean into it's kind of extremely exciting time to be alive because I think we've left the age of Pisces. We're in a new age. We're in the age of Aquarius now,
Mm.
and we're going to see so much change. I think a lot of things are going to break, and I think that beauty can come from things breaking. I think something new is going to be built up, but I think that you have to get through the breaking portion of our
If
history.
if you want to focus on the omelet, then that's where we're headed. If you want to focus on the broken eggs, then you might go, oh, the poor eggs. So yeah, it's this
Yeah.
crazy place we're in where, at times it can seem like, whoa, what a dystopic moment and AI and all these crazy things all kicking off at the same time. And the other side is we're on the verge of something spectacular, and we've
Yes.
got free energy devices out there. We just need a bit more time for this whole legacy sort of
Yes.
monolith to collapse a bit more so they don't kill every single one who comes out with the free energy machine, I mean, which they did in the
It's true.
70s and 80s, and now it's like too late, guys. It's coming through whether you like it or not, and people are
Yeah.
figuring out these, it's the first time we've had this conversation about how the US was captured by the corporate Washington
Yes.
DC. And, you know,
Yeah.
I'm hearing people talk about this who are the whole conspiracy thing is now coming out of the closet. Because when I got into this, it was like, oh, just weird kind of people like me were talking about it. But now you've got Elon Musk referring to things like this, Kennedy. You've got there's this professor, this UK economics professor, Richard Werner, I believe his name is, who's talking about, in a scholastic terms, the capture of our monetary system through central banking.
Yeah.
You know, let's put it out there now, guys. It's on the
Yes.
table. You don't want to
Yes.
hide it any longer. Some guys got together back in the day and they took us off the gold standard and they created fiat
Right.
currency and this whole scam, and it's a real big scam. Let's wake up now.
Preach. Yes. Yes. Preach. Say
Yeah.
it loud. Like,
So
yes.
that's all coming out. It's all coming to
Yeah.
a head now. So I think we're just awash with possibilities. And depending on which way you look, you can go, oh my God, I'm black pill. How are we ever going to make it beyond this? Then, it's just another psyop. Even the good
Yes.
stuff, no, they're setting us up for the next thing, right? Or you can see it from the red pill side and see that it's beyond their control now.
Yep.
It's
It's
too
in
far gone.
motion. Yep.
Yeah.
It's gonna be exciting. I'm really swimming in, trying to l- launch myself up 30,000 feet in the air and kind of look down and be like, "Ooh, this is exciting times, guys. This is. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming up, and I'm pulling for us. I really am.
Yeah.
I'm pulling for
Yeah,
us.
yeah, yeah.
Um, what do you hope people get from reading your book? What do you hope that is their biggest takeaway after reading The Monkey and the Bodhi Tree? What's your hopes?
Um, I suppose there are a few different aspects to that, and one of them would be the recognition that there are other possibilities, that there are higher states, and there is something called enlightenment or realization, and it can be seen throughout all of the different traditions. This isn't some strange phenomenon that happened once in one part of the world. This is something that's open to humanity as a whole. It's something that's part of our legacy and our future. Um, I also like to show people, perhaps people that are a bit more like us, that aren't so conventional and that haven't found their footing in a more conventional or orthodox spiritual tradition, that there's way more to spirituality than that. And there is a way for you. And there is a path to be your authentic self, to be genuine, and to be a seeker after truth, and to make way on the spiritual path. So I guess, and I want to bring to the world's attention some of these crazy, beautiful figures that have inspired me throughout my life, and give them a sort of introduction so they can go off and investigate these people for themselves. Every person will have certain people they'll vibe with more and go, yeah, I kind of, and as I have, and they can go off and on their own quests after that. So I'd like to make it clear that that logic and reason isn't the peak of human capacity, cognitive capacity. There is something beyond that. And that's what the first part of this book tries to give the very complete argument for why that is so.
I think curiosity about oneself is something that needs to have a resurgence definitely in human culture. I
Absolutely.
don't think there's enough of it,
I think
curiosity.
we don't realize the miracle that this is, that, We you wake up in it day to day and you to kind of get, but when you really stop and think, all of this, everything, it's like, my God, this is it's all just mind blowing. And I think we need to tap more into that aspect of reality, that wow, we should, the wow factor of day to day mundane life needs to be sort of reclaimed. And we need to
Yeah.
see spirit everywhere and the magnificence
Yeah.
of how this all works, how it all works together and we're here and existence even is. What a miracle that is.
It's magic, it really is magic. Our lives are magical. And I've said on this show before, when you start paying attention to the universe and paying attention to energy, and even I have so many synchronicities in my life. I have so many nods of the universe tipping their hat at me all the time because I'm meditating, because I'm tapping in, because I'm listening, because I'm trying to um, be more in tune with my body, with my spiritual side. You'll see signs everywhere. Signs will come up everywhere. We're living in a magical little place that people don't see the magic in it anymore. We need to regain our sense of curiosity and understanding that we don't have it all figured out yet.
Yeah.
We don't. There's so much more out there that we need to be learning and being more curious about what and who we are.
And here we are, you in the US, I'm in the south of Spain, talking about
Yes.
this stuff through this screen that thousands of people have been needed to
Yeah.
invent the different elements of. I mean, it's crazy mind boggling when you think about it.
It really is. And we're only going to see more and more of this like crazy
I-
technology. I mean, we could have a whole nother hour discussion about the rise of technology that is upon us, everything from neural implants that they're
Right.
going to want to do to us.
Yeah.
Like, that's a whole nother discussion of
Yeah. Yeah.
dystopian craziness.
Yeah.
Um, Jason, you're a renaissance man. You really are. You are. You're deeply um intellectual. Like, I find that most people don't walk on their spiritual path, just from my own personal experience, very short, unless something traumatic happens. And I love that your story originates with your sense of being curious about what you are, who you are, what we're doing here, and leading it to this crazy wisdom of folks that have been with us for, since ancient times. So my hat's off to you. You're there's not a lot of you out there, let's just say that.
Thank you for a beautiful
Not that I've
conversation.
met. I
My
mean,
pleasure.
it was a pleasure. Where can people pick up your book?
So your obvious places, Amazon and I don't know, all good book outlets.
All
I
good.
guess even your local bookshop, if they don't have it, then you can order it there. You can order it from the website of the publisher Collective Inc.
Yeah.
Um, so you can go
I
to my website, jasonbrettsell.com, and there's links to my books there and my documentaries as well. So yeah,
I
again,
love that. I will put the link in the show notes to your book from Amazon, and I'll put the collective ink in there too.
thank
And with that, it was a real pleasure. I loved chatting with you. Anytime you have something else that you want to come back and promote, we can have another spiritual discussion.
yeah,
I loved it. We need to do more of these.
indeed.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week on Fate, from Atheism to Enlightenment. I would like to thank my guest, Jason, and all of his information will be in the show notes. We will see you next week. Journey well, everyone. Bye bye. And that is a wrap on this episode of Fate, from Atheism to Enlightenment. I want to thank Jason for coming on the show today and spending his time. I love having these conversations with people. It just enriches my life. It really does. Without this show, I probably never would have even come across that book. And I really had never read or thought about ancient master gurus, the Buddhists, the Taoists, the adepts that were out there changing the landscape of what we think about ourselves, about spirituality, about human development and growth. So I loved our conversation. He can come back anytime he wants. I also loved that he didn't have a traumatic event that put him on his path. Almost everyone that I talked to on this show has had some sort of tragic event that preempted this need, or this path, this spiritual development. But Jason, it seems like he was just naturally curious and was seeking knowledge. And there's not enough seekers of knowledge out there now. We are too distracted by whatever's going on with our phones or on social media or whatever. And it is a breath of fresh air to meet somebody that just had a natural curiosity to find out and figure out more, that we are more than what we're just programmed to think and believe, that there's so much more going on out there. So I hope conversations like this inspire you to think beyond and go a little deeper and find your own spiritual practice. One of the things that I think I gleaned most out of this book is that all these different practices and rituals and things that were done, at the end of the day, there is no real one way to enlightenment. There's no one rigid path to figuring out who you are. It's finding out what speaks to you and allows you to grow in your most authentic self that you can be. I think all of us are meant to come down here and learn and grow and expand and be our most authentic selves in that process. So I think Jason has achieved that goal for sure. I'm working on it. I definitely have crazy wisdom tendencies. Like, I think out of the box. I'm not a follower. I don't really care what other people think of me. But I don't consider myself wise. I definitely consider myself a seeker of knowledge, though. Not always. Not when I was living unconsciously, getting spoon fed whatever was happening in mainstream culture and thinking that, the ABCDs of living that we all ingest from the time we start school is how you're supposed to live your life. You know, I just think there's so much more, and I've never been more curious about who I am, who I'm going to be. I still think I'm in a great stage of evolution. I don't know if I'm ever going to be done evolving. I don't know. I think it could be a constant unraveling as I age, of growing and expanding and gaining more knowledge as I go. So I hope you guys all continue to stick with me and evolve with me, man. Come on the journey. It's great over here. Um, anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed that one. Pick up his book, The Monkey and the Bodhi Tree. It might expand your knowledge on what you thought ancient text or Zen masters had to say. It's pretty interesting, some of the tales and whatnot. I enjoyed it. Link will be in the show notes. Um, if you like what I'm doing on this show, do me a favor, please. Subscribe, tell a friend, like, share, do all the things. I would love to keep this show and let it grow. I feel like I need to continue evolving, growing. I want this show to do the same. I would like to reach as many people as I can with this show, and I need your help to do it. So do me a favor, do all the things. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm at F period A period T period E period. Follow the show. I'm working on my social media game as always. Um, I am doing some other things. I'm working on a new logo. I'm getting a new website. I'm going to start really having this be something that I do more um seriously. I'm really enjoying it. It's expanding on its own, and I want to ride the wave. Ride the wave. So I'm going to be doing some upgrades on my end to put out the best material I can. I also think that I want to start diving into some more conspiratorial topics that are maybe less spiritual and more about our culture, human consciousness, even aliens, other dimensions, stuff that's not very mainstream. I'm very curious about that stuff, and I want to start talking about that too. I want to keep the show broad. I want there to be a little bit of everything for everyone on this podcast. So you can kind of pick and choose what resonates with you, what you want to listen to. So I'm going to broaden my guests and I'm going to broaden the show and I'm going to ramp it up, guys. So stay with me, keep journeying with me. I really appreciate all the support that I can get in this endeavor because I am trying to raise the consciousness of this planet and I need your help. So we will see you next week, guys, on Fate from Atheism to Enlightenment. You know the drill. Welcome to your fate game. I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.